Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I appreciate you coming out to see my ugly face. You are all legends. It's great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, of course, to speak to everyone here tonight. Obviously, you're a true patriot. We all know that. We can see how many Australian flags there are here. Plenty of Australian flags. That's right. In my office, I have 3 Australian flags. In my real estate office, I have 4 Australian flags. The only reason I don't have any more Australian flags in my parliamentary office is because they won't let me. They only gave me 3 flagpoles. That's it, just 3. I wasn't happy about that, so I'm going to have to buy my own. Anyway, obviously, Peter, you care very deeply about our nation, as do all of us here, as do I. Obviously, my name is Ralph Babette. I am the Senator for Victoria. Victoria. You're going to clap for Victoria? Thank you for clapping for my home state. I know we have a little bit of rivalry here and there. Victoria, what a place it's been the last few years. I like to call it the People's Socialist Republic of Victoria. That's what it's called. That's what it's really called. So I was born overseas on the small island nation of Rodrigues, which is a part of Mauritius. Who knows where that is? Raise your hand. Where Mauritius is or where Rodrigues is? Mauritius? Which one? Mauritius. Okay, very good. So Rodrigues, it's around, from here, from where we're standing right now, around 7,500 kilometres away. That's how far it is. Now, size-wise, it's around 100 square kilometres in size. That's it. Let's put it into perspective. You ready for this? Greater Melbourne, around 10,000 square kilometres. Greater Adelaide, 3,200 square kilometres. That's how small my island nation where I was born is. Now, when I was very young, my parents, they migrated to Australia. I came here with my mum, my dad, and my brother. Now, how lucky am I? How lucky am I that they chose Australia? Australia as the country where they would settle and they would spend the rest of their lives. I'm very lucky that it wasn't Canada or New Zealand, God forbid. Goodness gracious, not New Zealand. Very lucky. Now, Australia is one of the only countries in the world, where a young immigrant boy from a foreign country can arrive, that's me by the way, can arrive, can grow up, and then can eventually be elected to one of the highest offices in our land. And that is an honour. Thank you, ma'am. One person, come on, guys and girls. That is an honour that I don't take lightly. I do not take it lightly, not one bit. Now, we are all lucky, all of us, to be living in Australia, whether we were born here or we migrated here like I did. Now, it is time, ladies and gents, that we were all once again, proud of our flag, proud of our nation, proud of Australia Day, and proud to call ourselves Aussies. Right? Am I right or wrong? Hey, I'm right. I know I'm right. Look, ladies and gents, I will not sit idly by while those in the media and those, thank you, sir. Those in the media and those, look, a little bit loopy, hard left activists consistently, every single damn day, tell us how bad Australia is, how racist it is, how oppressive our country is, how we need to repent for our sins. That is a lie. It's a damn lie. It's a bullshit. That's what it is. I will not sit by while they slam our great nation. I won't do it. I won't sit there while I say how bad this country is, how bad our country is. Now, ladies and gents, if you want an argument against that negative, self-hating, black armband view of Australian history, you're looking at him. This is your argument against that crap right here in front of you. I'm an immigrant. I was born off the east coast of Africa in the middle of the Indian Ocean, thousands of kilometers from these shores, and I'm standing in front of you as a senator for Victoria, a successful business owner, and a proud Australian. I couldn't even speak English when I got here. I spoke French. Australia's not a racist country. Australia's not a bad country. Australia's a freaking fantastic country. And those hard left activists that hate us so much, why don't they just pack their bags and get lost? Why don't they do that? Why don't they do that? So my parents, see what they did? My parents, they came here. They came here with not much more than their Catholic faith. Whether you believe in my faith or not, it doesn't matter, but that's what they came here with. And they came here with the belief that Australia would provide opportunities for their kids, and she did. She provided. Because we didn't complain, we didn't bitch, we didn't moan, we didn't say how bad the country was, we just got to work. And that's what people have just forgotten. They've forgotten how to get their hands dirty and get to work. Now, in 1993, as Peter said, we officially became Australian citizens. Now, I was much too young to understand the magnitude of that day, but you know what I could understand as a kid? What I could understand was how important, how significant that day and that moment was for my parents. We went to the ceremony, and at the end, we officially called Australia home. Now, I still remember that ceremony. I remember how happy and how proud my parents were. And I'm freaking glad that I can stand here in front of you today and speak to you as a senator. My family have nothing but love for Australia, obviously. Australia has accepted us. Australia has given us a fair go. Australia has afforded us the opportunity and the chance to have a prosperous life. Once again, the idea that Australia and Australians are racist and that our nation is oppressive, it is offensive to me. It is offensive. My life disproves that bullshit argument completely and utterly. And yet these left-wing activists will continue to argue that Australia must be deconstructed and remade in their ungrateful and their unappreciative image. I won't stand for it. Now, one of the reasons that I personally went into politics was because I could no longer stand by and watch our great country, the country that gives us such incredible opportunity, all of us, be torn apart by unrepresentative grifters. That's what they are. Many of those grifters occupy parliamentary seats right now. I want Australia to remain free, to remain a land of opportunity, and to remain a land full of hope. Hope for those blessed to be born here, and hope for those lucky enough to be given the chance to call her home. That's what I want. Now, the reason that you are all here tonight is that you understand very intimately that we cannot take our freedoms or our opportunities for granted. You all understand that. Our way of life is under attack. Now, make no mistake, it is under attack by those who would seek to replace equality with equity, capitalism with socialism, unity with division, and freedom with control. Make no mistake, Now, you don't have to be a Christian to understand that it is our Judeo-Christian heritage that is the foundation for all the freedom that we enjoy today. But if you destroy the foundations, ladies and gents, how can anything else stand with no foundation? Without a foundation, you have nothing on which to build. Now, you don't have to come from a household where mum and dad got married and stayed married to understand that the nuclear family is the building block for a prosperous community. But if you undermine the nuclear family, which we all know is happening right now, we're not stupid, if you undermine the nuclear family at every gosh darn opportunity that you have, what do you build with in its place? What do you put there instead? Now, you don't have to be an A-grade student to realise that education is essential and that it is in the interests of all Australians to have schools that teach children to read and to write. Am I crazy? Should kids be taught to read and to write? You're damn right they should. We are currently producing kids right now out of the educational system that could not, for the life of them, tell you what a noun is or what a verb is, but they can say with confidence what a pansexual is. They can describe what gender non-binary is. And they believe that they can change the weather by eating bugs and by paying more taxes to the government. But that's going to solve your problems. We are producing kids who can't do long division. But you know what they can do? They can tell you with certainty, the kind of certainty that only comes from being indoctrinated into a kind of religious cult, that there are 72 genders. I can tell you that. There's 70, or I don't know, are there more now? I don't know. Are there more? Potentially there are. I just can't keep up with it. I can't keep up. Let me tell you something right now. There are 2 genders, male and female. That's it. That's it. The end. Am I crazy or what? Am I crazy? Yes or no? Yes or no? No. Thank you, ladies and gents. We're all crazy. Half the country is crazy. We are producing kids who know nothing of the horrors of communism. Nothing. But they can tell you why capitalism is evil and why it must be abandoned. They'll tell you that. The same capitalism that has given them their laptops and their smartphones in their pockets and so much food to eat that obesity is one of the biggest killers in the Western world. That's how rich we are from capitalism. We're eating too much is one of your biggest damn problems. What the hell? Now, I'm sure some of you here in this room, I'm sure you've heard the saying that under communism, you're waiting the bread lines, but under capitalism, the bread lines wait for you. You heard that or not? Well, now you just did. There you go. Now, if we fail to educate our children to understand and to be proud of our Western democracy and of the economic system that underpins it, how can we ever expect these kids to defend it, much less continue it after we're gone? We're all smart enough here in this room to realise that there are a couple of things that have created the environment in which this country has flourished, and these things, they must be defended if we are to pass on to our children the wonderful, the amazing country that we have all enjoyed thus far. Obviously, I'm very pleased to be spending this evening and this platform tonight with Professor Flint. Thank you, sir. Now, he continues to defend our constitutional monarchy against those who insist that we must become a republic. That's what they insist. Now, God forbid we do become a republic with Kevin Rudd or Malcolm Turnbull or Waleed Ali as our president. Who wants that to happen? Not me. Can you imagine that? A washed-up lefty politician as our president or some media hack? No, thank you. Now, it's bad enough having Prime Minister Mr. Albanese. Can you imagine having President Malcolm Turnbull? Can you imagine that? I couldn't imagine that. Now, our Constitution, it works. It works. It's worked since its inception. It's a very good Constitution. Thank you, sir. Now, we are the most peaceful, democratic nation on this earth, and we can keep it that way if we can keep the hard left at bay. And we must keep them at bay so that our country continue to be as strong and as prosperous as it has been. Now, what works has never been the priority of hard left activists. It's never been their priority. They are committed to dogged ideology rather than to practical outcome. And so they are always seeking to destroy what works in favour of their untested, unproven utopian ideas, which incidentally always seems to grant them more power in relation to everyone else. It's funny how that always works out that way. Now, the agenda of the hard left is clear. First, at the moment, they want Australians to insert race into the Constitution via the dishonestly named Indigenous voice to Parliament. Now, I say it's dishonest, and it is, because it implies that Indigenous Australians do not already have a voice to Parliament. Rubbish, ladies and gents. Every Australian has a voice to Parliament, regardless of sex, gender, race, whatever. It's called your vote. That's what it's called. We all have a voice already. Thank you. Thank you. Now, not to mention, get this, not to mention 8 out of our current 76 senators sit in Parliament right now are of Aboriginal descent. Right now. Now, that outnumbers the population 3 to 1. Aboriginal people have more of a voice than many other nationalities do. And that's just the facts. Now, look, it's one man, one vote, right? One man, one vote. One man, one woman, one vote. It is the bedrock, and it is the very principle of equality before the law. That's what that is. But the Prime Minister, Miss Albanese's voice to Parliament, it just destroys that principle. That's what it does. And it replaces it with special rights for a small group of people based entirely on their race. Now, if I'm not mistaken, favouring someone because of race is the very description of racism. The very description. Now, it was Martin Luther King who said, "Don't judge me by the colour of my skin, but by the content of my character." That's what he said. And they're taking that and they're throwing it out the window, and that's not right. It's not just a bad idea, ladies and gents. It's morally wrong. And we need to do everything we can, of course, to help Indigenous Australians, but inserting race into the Constitution is not the right way to do it. The way you help Indigenous Australians or anyone else is opportunity, is jobs, is helping them with an educational. That's how you do it. Economically help people and then give them the tools that they need to help themselves. That's what you do. That's what you do. It's common sense, but it seems like common sense is not so common anymore. Now, mark my words, if Australia votes yes to the voice, it will embolden these lefty activists to immediately push for a republic. That's the thing with these lefty activists. There's always something else coming down the pipeline. All the time, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Now, if they succeed in changing the Constitution to ensure that a small group of people have extra rights based on their race, they will then after that immediately argue that we must cut ties with the British monarchy because a small group of people should not have rights based on birth. You can't make this up, and of course, the irony is going to be lost on them immediately. They won't get it. They won't get it. Now, one of the great problems we have in our country is inner city politicians. Now, if you ask them, I'm sure if you ask them, hey, where does the milk for your latte comes from? They might answer, oh, Coles. Maybe they'll say, oh yeah, from Woolworths, something like that. Now, these are the people who are making the big decisions with no regards for the farmers who sustain our nation. Now, Australia should be the food bowl of this planet. We have the capacity, not only just to feed ourselves, of course, but also to export large amounts of food around this world. We do. But our political elites, what are they doing? I'll tell you what, you already know. They are selling our prime agricultural land to foreign owners. That's what they're doing. They're selling our water as well. Foreign owners who, frankly, if push came to shove, could not give a damn about our country or about our people, about us. Couldn't care. Now, the UAP, the United Australia Party, will continue to insist that our prime agricultural land, our water, or any other assets of significance to our nation, like power companies and ports, should not be in foreign hands. It should be in the people's hands. Am I right or wrong? Right or wrong? Right? Yes? Yes. Thank you. Look, placing our infrastructure assets into foreign hands, it's wrong, but what does it do? It's a national security risk. That's what it is. The Port of Darwin. You heard about the Port of Darwin? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes. Port of Darwin is not in Australian hands. One of our most important strategic ports. It's in the hands of a company controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I want to make it clear, if I ever talk about the CCP, I'm talking about the government. I am never, ever talking about the Chinese people. They are good people. They are just like us. They just want to be free and to be left alone from an overbearing government. If I ever talk about China in any speeches after today, let the record show that I'm only talking about the government. That's it. Now, as of 2021, 11%, or about 4,400 gigalitres of Australian water, was foreign owned. And China ranks in the top 3 foreign owners of Australian water. More than 65% of foreign-owned water is used for agriculture, resulting in Australian farmers, like many of you here, buying your own water back from foreign interests. Your water. It's pretty ridiculous, I think anyway, and I think any normal person would agree. Now, the UAP is one of the few voices in Parliament who believes that we must build more dams to increase our capacity to irrigate our land in order to supply food to our people. That's common sense, right? It's common sense. Build more dams. Why not? Build as many as we can. But you know what the lefty activists want to do? They don't want to build dams, but at the same time, they'll complain about water shortages. And to add insult to injury, then they want to cover our prime agricultural land in solar panels after that. And then they'll complain about the rising costs of food. Our socialist treasurer, Mr. Jim Chalmers, in his first budget last year, he scrapped more than $6 billion worth of planned dam building projects, and he redirected the funds towards, well, mostly towards electricity grid updates to prop up the failing renewable energy transition. That's what he did. Now, I couldn't believe it. I don't know if you saw this, but I couldn't believe it when the New Zealand's former Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, proposed to tax farmers for the emissions of their livestock. Who saw this? Hands up, who saw it? Okay, quite a few of you have seen this. Now, they were looking at a fart tax. Let's be honest, it was a fart tax. And I'm not even joking. I'm actually being deadly serious. They wanted to tax farting livestock. They probably should. Now, these people are just loopy. They are loopy. Now, it's all a bit of a joke, I get that. But our political elites, they're not laughing. Or are they not laughing? They are looking at the idea seriously. They are. Now, there are plenty of people in federal parliament right now who are deadly serious about taxing primary producers for emissions. They're serious. Now, many of you know better than I do that if this climate madness and the irresponsible economic policies its adherents subscribe to continue, if it continues, farmland will reach a point, I mean, if it hasn't already reached that point, it'll reach a point where the price per acre is simply uneconomical for the next generation to buy and to turn a profit. Has it reached that point yet, or is it close? It's reached it? All right, it's reached it. There you go, from the man himself. Now, carbon taxes for the rural sector, they just must be opposed. They have to be opposed, and they must be opposed at every point, Now, me and the United Australia Party, we will continue to oppose it. Now, war. Let's get serious for a sec. Wars of the past have been fought over oil. We all know that. It is a very, very real possibility that the wars of the future are going to be fought over food security and water. Food security and water. That is going to be the future, black gold, the future oil. At the moment, people like me, unfortunately, we're in a minority in the federal parliament, but the tide is turning as many, many people wake up to the lies and the garbage spewed by the hard left activists. People are waking up, so don't lose hope. Now, many of you here run a business. I'm a small business owner myself. Sadly, many of those who sit in those government benches, they've never run a business, never, and it shows. Many of those politicians over there right now are career politicians, that's what they are. They started as staffers, that's what they did. Started as staffers a decade ago, gradually worked their way up the chain into a safe seat, a safe Liberal or Labor seat. Worked their way up there. They've been sitting there ever since, totally and completely disconnected from real life, devoid of any real world experience, because all they know is a political machine. That's how these big parties generally work. They promote from within as a reward for a lifetime of obedient service. Then when they get into the parliament, they're still obedient servants to the men behind the curtain that pull the real strings. That's how it works. Now, our trainee treasurer, Jim Chalmers, he said that he wants to remake, whatever that means, remake capitalism. Who saw that in the paper? A couple of people here? Yeah, he wants to remake capitalism. That's not going to be good. He studied arts and politics at university. He hasn't lived in the real world. He can't even find the $275 that the Labor Party promised you at the election as a saving on your power bill. Did you recall that? Labor gets in, we're going to save you $275. Where's my $275? Have you been to Coles or Woolworths lately? Have you spent $100 on your shopping? Prices through the roof, you spend $100, you get nothing. Nothing. But Mr. Chalmers, the treasurer, he wants to remodel capitalism. Not only that, he might raid your super as well. Who saw that? The super changes coming through. Yeah. At the moment, it only affects super balances over 3 million, but you can bet that this sets a nice little precedent. Guess who's next? You're next. That's how it works. It's quite frightening when you think about it, actually. Now, both the Liberal and the Labor parties have given up on balancing our books. They've given up. They don't care anymore. Imagine if you don't balance your books. What happens to you if you don't do that? Right? If you run a small business, if you run a household, you don't balance your books, you'll be kicked to the curb real quick. Real quick. But both the major parties, and they're both guilty of this, they've trapped our nation in structural debt and deficit. It appears to be politically unviable for any government to even attempt to balance the budget or to repay our national debt. They won't do it because they love their political careers just a bit too much. But whatever happened to courage? Whatever happened to for the greater good? Where's that? Now, our national debt, who knows how much it is? Yell it out. $1 trillion. How much is $1 trillion? 1,000 billion dollars. 1,000 billion dollars. $1 billion is 1,000 million. That's 1 billion. Yeah, you need $1,000 billion to reach $1 trillion. That's our national debt. Now we need to repay our debt. We really need to repay our debt, or else we will not maintain our quality of life. The Australian people are hurting. Budgets are being smashed by unchecked inflation. The average person is cutting costs wherever they can. Eating out, not happening as much. Holidays, on the back burner. You just got to pay your mortgage, that's it. Just got to focus on paying your mortgage. The average person anyway is really struggling right now. Now, our Treasurer should emulate the actions of the average Australian and tighten the nation's fiscal belt to reduce unneeded fat. Produce a lean budget, one for tough economic times. Now, I personally went to the last election, and so did all the other UAP candidates, proposing a 15% export license on all iron ore exports only. Now, the receipts of this would have been quarantined, I hate that word actually, quarantine is not a good word, would have been set aside and used to repay our ballooning debt so that our kids and our children's kids would not be burdened by our generation's wastefulness. And the best part about this proposal is that the buyers, the guys and girls who buy our iron ore would have paid the 15% because it was only on the exports. All right? Now, we could have easily made the CCP pay off our national debt, just like that. Not hard at all. Speaking of taxation, the United Australia Party proposed a zonal taxation system for regional Australia as a way of encouraging people to move into the regions. We proposed that people living more than 200 k's out of a capital city are given a 20% tax concession as an incentive for rural living. Now, this would help build communities as well as provide much needed help in housing affordability, get people out of those compact cities. Now, our ideas, they were innovative, but they were practical and they would work. Simple, practical ideas. And that's what we need in Parliament, new ideas, not just more of the same crap, not just more of the same. Now, the government seems to have forgotten the regional communities, forgotten. They're now obsessed instead with creating what they call 15-minute cities, or in some places, 20-minute cities. Who's heard of this before? Hands up. You've heard of it? Good. Where millions of people are crammed into tight little spaces. Can you all see where this is going to go in the future? Governments in cahoots with global entities like the United Nations, the World Economic Forum. You know what? They don't want you earning. They don't want you investing. They don't want you owning things, like they've said more than once now. Now, when the boss of the WEF, Klaus Schwab, when he said he dreamed of a day, and you said this before, Peter, he dreamed of a day when you would own nothing and you would be happy. He wasn't joking. You think he was joking? He wasn't joking. He was telling everyone up front what the politicians and the corporate leaders all over the world have agreed upon. Now, when you hear own nothing and be happy, make no mistake, it's happening right now. I'll give you examples right now. What young person can easily afford a home now? They can't, they rent. Do you want to get a movie? You can't get one from the Blockbuster or wherever else now. You've got to lease the subscription of a Netflix or something like this online, right? As another example. This is what's happening. They call it servitization. That's the word that they use, that the World Economic Forum uses, servitization. So they will turn everything in your life into a service. So you will not own anything. You'll lease it, or you'll pay a subscription for it. That's what they mean by own nothing and be happy. It's very practical what they're thinking, and it's happening all around us right now. It's not just some like fantasy sentence that they dug up out of nowhere. They mean it. They really do. Now, they have agreed to dismantle capitalism under the guise of a climate emergency and replace that globalists with a high-tech socialism like the world has never seen before. Their model for our nation is this. It is a tiny ruling elite up here at the top, and everyone else like a peasant down below. That's the plan. That's the plan. Now the government, through their pandemic, they've used as an excuse to begin the implementation of a digital ID. It's happening. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's happening. And they're going to start planning for central bank digital currency. Now my critics, they might watch this video wherever it goes up, YouTube or wherever else, and they might say, that guy's a conspiracy theorist. But you know what a conspiracy theorist is these days? It's a person who's a year early to the party. That's what it is. A person who pays attention. A person who understands that power corrupts. A person who understands that big government is no friend of the people, but rather the antithesis to freedom, self-determination and prosperity. The government will rob you. They will rob you blind, and they'll demand that you be thankful for it. That's what they'll do. Now, as President Ronald Reagan once said, he said, the most frightening words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That's what he said. He actually said that. Now, we saw during the pandemic the unimaginable abuse of civil rights, unimaginable in a democracy like ours. And if you believe, ladies and gents, that such abuses won't happen again, if you actually believe that, this time under the name of a climate emergency, then I'm going to submit to you that you're the conspiracy theorist. History repeats. It always does. That much is clear. Now, the United Australia Party, we stand for individual freedom. That, after all, is what makes a great nation, individual freedom. It's not about the individual being consumed by the collective. It's about the collective doing all it can to ensure that individuals can express their God-given right to flourish and to prosper to the best of their ability. And that in turn, ladies and gents, makes us all stronger. Now, I mentioned before the overreaching and the overwrought pandemic response. Now, the UAP will continue to fight to bring to account those who acted so outrageously during the past few years. We're going to fight tooth and nail to bring them to account. Now, lives and livelihoods were destroyed. Many of you here suffered greatly. Some people did commit suicide. Yes, suicide rates were actually way up. It was destroyed by politicians and government bureaucrats who acted without evidence or with evidence that they've withheld from us. We have not forgotten and we will never forget. I, as a UAP Senator, and Craig Kelly as our National Director, and Clive Palmer as our Chairman, love or hate the man, he does a lot of good for us and he gives a damn about the average Australian. He doesn't have to do what he does. He's a billionaire. He doesn't have to help. He doesn't have to care, but he does. And you know what? I'm going to go off the cuff here. I asked Clive one time, I said, Clive, why are you doing this? Why, as a member of, the quote unquote, one of the potential elites, why do you care so much about the future of Australia? And you know what he said to me? He said, I just love my country. I grew up in Footscray. So Footscray is, like a rough suburb in Melbourne. I grew up there. I know what it's like to be an average person, and I want to leave the country better for everyone and for my kids as well. That's what he said. And I said, Clive, good enough for me, mate. Let's go. That's what he said. Yes. Yeah. We're very lucky to have him in our corner. Now, transparency and accountability, it builds trust. That's what it does. In the past few weeks, I've gone into Parliament, I've gone in there, and I've asked the government some awkward questions. And I'll continue to ask those awkward questions. Now, I don't care if they squirm when I ask these questions. They should squirm. Now, the questions that I've asked recently are about excess mortality, which is currently running at about 15 to 16%, in between that. Did you know that? 15%? Usually excess mortality wouldn't vary by about 1 or 2%. Now, it's not all from COVID, like you might suspect. Not at all. No. So what the hell is going on? Why are so many more people dying? We need to know. We need to know. People are dying in great numbers. We need an investigation. We do. Now, the United Australia Party is one of the few political parties pushing for a royal commission into the response to COVID-19. On what basis were lockdowns, mandates, border closures made? I'd like to know. What damage did they do? I'd like to know that too. Who's going to be held responsible? I'd like to know that as well. Thank you. Now, I could mention a dozen other policy areas off the top of my head that are all vital at this time in our history, when it seems that the very foundation stone of our society is being uprooted. But I'll conclude by simply saying this. I love our country. Australia has provided my parents and I with a life that we could have never imagined when we arrived in the early 90s. I'm not in politics because I think I'm entitled to anything. In fact, I'm doing this at great personal sacrifice. I'm in politics because I'm deeply appreciative of our nation, and I desperately want to pass on the good things that I received to the generation that are going to come next. That's what I want. Now, I know that this is also the wish of Sarah Game, sitting in the front row here of One Nation. Thank you for coming, Sarah. I want to acknowledge you tonight, and I want to congratulate you. Now, Sarah is a lone voice of reason in the South Australian Parliament. Lone voice of reason, so give her your support as best as you can. Go to her website, go to her social media, click follow, send her an email, all that kind of stuff, because it all makes a big difference. We need boots on the ground. We do. Now, between all centre-right parties in South Australia at the federal election, we managed to attract around 10% of our vote. Now, that is enough when you combine it to win an upper house seat at every single election if we are able to ensure unity and flow of preferences. It is. Same is true in Victoria as well, when I was elected, and also right across the country, actually. Now, if we can repeat that result at every election, we will eventually secure enough seats to hold the balance of power in the Senate over time. We can wrestle back control from the Greens, well, not just the Greens, the closet Greens in the Labor and the Liberal Party as well. We can do it. It will take time though, so do not lose heart. Now, success relies upon unity. That's what it relies on. It relies upon everyone in this room right here working together. All the centre-right parties, you know, we have a lot in common. We have quite a bit in common and almost no differences. We are the only parties willing to truly put Australia first because we love our country. Our candidates, they're not career politicians. We bring to Canberra the life experience and the common sense that the career politicians just don't have anymore. They don't have it. We couldn't give a shit about our jobs. We don't care about our positions in government. What we care about is standing up for what is right and doing what's best for our nation. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I value your support. Most of us couldn't give a damn if we didn't get elected next time, because that's not what we're about. We're not about getting elected again. We're about saving our nation. Now, I'm going to leave you with this quote from George Washington, a founding father of the United States. Now, he said, "Agriculture is the most healthful, most useful, and most noble employment of man." And I think he was right. Now, thank you again, Peter. Thank you, Flag Australia. God bless you, and God bless our nation. Cheers.